So now we're going to learn the new syntax to make a decision in our code. Now remember at the beginning of the semester, I told you that we are learning how to do what we call structured programming, okay? There were three, in the structured programming says that everything is one of three things. The first is a sequence of steps. We've done that, check. Input, output operations, these are all sequential, right? The second is the selection statement, and that's what we're going to learn this week, okay? The way that C++ has two ways of doing selection. The first one is the if-else. This is actually pretty straightforward. Most students like this and understand this well, okay? So this should be no problem for us all to understand, okay? Now, the first thing that you can, here's the first new keyword in C++, and that is the if keyword, okay? Now, an if does not always have to have an else. It can be by itself. We may say, if it's raining, take an umbrella. That's it. There's no else in this case. So an if by itself is a legal thing to do. So let's look at the syntax, because this is what you need to understand. In general, we have the keyword if. This is a reserved word in C, so it's if lowercase, reserved word in C. Okay? Inside the parentheses, we have an expression. We know what an expression is. It's a combination of operators and operands. But in the case of an if, what operators will we be using? What operators will we be using inside here generally? Or, and an or, the logicals, we call those the logicals, and the relationals, the less than, greater than, and test for equality. Okay? So the operators that are going to mostly be used in this expression are those two that we just looked at, the relationals and the logicals. Okay, now, notice that this is in a parentheses. I think we said this at the beginning, that whatever expression is in here must be followed by a parentheses. That's a C++ rule. Okay? Notice that I indent following the if. Okay? Now, here's the important part. What can go here is what's called a statement. Now, let's define what a statement is. Okay? The first thing that a statement can be is a single statement. All right? So, have I brought C++ up here before? I'm feeling it might take a... A single statement is basically an expression followed by a semicolon. Okay, so let me create a new project. Give me a second here. And remember how I told you after the first week that you were going to not even need your sheet by the time you did this? How many people used their sheet the last time in lab? Now you really remember how to do it. You don't need it anymore, right? Okay, so hopefully you're all getting much more familiar with doing the labs using this compiler. Now, okay, so the first example, single statement, that's what I want to show you. All right, so let's say that I have a variable, and I want to enter the variable. And I'm going to print, whoops, I'm going to display whether this number is positive. Now, notice it automatically indents. Indentation is very important when you're a programmer for good practice. I'm really picky about that. To me, I don't like a lot of comments. I don't like, I mean, I don't want to say I don't like comments, but the clearer your code is, the better chance it has of working. I'd rather it be short and sweet and clear. So use good indentation. It's absolutely important to be a good programmer. Okay? So one tab comes in, and aside from my spelling, this is the introduction to the first guy, which is just a simple if. How do I make my screen bigger? I don't see the... Isn't there something? Isn't there a keystroke I can use? Control plus. Control scroll. Control scroll lock. Oh, okay. This is Chrome. There used to be a %. Let's try view. Do you see it? But that's not going to... A little bigger, but I should have it. Okay, we'll have to look this up. Oh, that's what I'm looking for. Okay, better? Okay, so this is basically just a simple if. There's no else clause in this case, and this is an example of an if, an expression, and a statement. Does everybody see that? If, expression, statement. Okay? So when will positive print? So when we enter a number and the number is greater than or equal to 0, it'll print positive. That's it. Okay? If we enter something like -3, what will happen? Nothing. No output. So let's run this. Okay? So there's the simple if. Now, let's get down to some of the nitty-gritties. Look back at my slide here, and a single statement is one thing that can appear. Let's skip down to this guy right here. I'm going to talk about this in a second. Okay? Does anybody know what a compound statement is? Anybody know what a single statement means? One statement which has a semicolon. Okay? What's a compound statement? Tyler? Yeah. If I want to do more than one statement, which a lot of times I'm going to want to do, okay, I can't just indent and pray. So let's say that not only do I want to, I'm going to add a counter. And let's say that not only do I want to print positive, I also want to bump the counter. When will the counter increment in this case? Everybody look, this is important, okay? You're all here. It's 9, I know it's early, but let's get this. Let's all get this, okay? Let me rephrase the question. Everybody, all eyes on me, off Facebook, off whatever crap you're on. When will this happen? When will this statement happen? If the number is positive. When will this statement happen? Always. The way this stands right now, let's do this. Let's prove it. Instead of doing the counter, let's say okay. So even though I indented this, all right, let's run this. So let's do the first scenario. Let's enter a positive number. What do you think the output's going to be if I enter a 5? Okay, now we haven't proven anything yet. Let's do the next guy, okay? Let's now try, because it looks like my intention is only for wake up to appear when it's positive. So let's now run this with a negative number. What do you think the output's going to be? So what's wrong? They wake up, even though it's indented, is not part of the if statement. If I want more than, even indenting makes me happy, makes your programs look beautiful, but does not change the logic. Indentation does not change the logic. If I want to change this logic so positive and wake up only appear when the number is greater than or equal to 0, I must make this a compound statement and use the brackets. So the definition basically of a compound statement is one statement or more than one statement that are surrounded by brackets that would be able to occur as part of an if statement. So could I have one and still have brackets? Yes. Could I have 10 and have brackets? Yes. Does everybody see the difference between what I just did and the code? This is a wonderful test question. What's the output? I always have lots of questions like that. I indent. You think I'm trying to trick you, but I've gone over this 20 times, okay? So only one statement following an if clause gets executed. If I want more than one, I must use brackets, okay? Questions so far? Sort of, kind of? We'll go over this more. Let's see, now how do I get out of full screen? Okay. It does have brackets now. Wait a second, what do you mean? Oh, you want me to run it with the brackets? Yeah. Did I run it with the brackets? No. Okay, so this time let's run it with the brackets. Okay? Now, if I now enter a 5, I don't know why I keep picking 5. If I now enter a 5, what's going to print? What's going to print if I enter a 5? Positive and wake up. We know that. That's easy. Okay? If I now print this with a, if I now run this with a -3, what's going to happen? Right, so what will happen is this guy will be false. It'll skip down here and just get out of the program. Okay? No output. Okay? Now, before I leave this slide, I said I was going to come back to a null statement. Now, this is a little bit of gotcha in C. Okay, I'm not sure you're ready for this, but what the hey. Okay. So a negative statement is a semicolon. A null statement. I'm sorry, did I say negative statement? A null statement is a semicolon. Okay? Don't use these randomly, okay? But here's the gotcha. Let me take these brackets out. Let's make this interesting. Let's say it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and you do the following. Okay. So what is the output if num is 5? Let's try it. Okay, why? Why did positive and wake up print? Why not just positive? Tyler? These two lines are always getting printed. And I'll show you why in a second. Let's run it once more with negative. So we're going to run it this time with -2. What's the output going to be? Positive wake up. Now here's why. This is what this program is being executed like. Does everybody see that? So if the number's positive, what statement is being executed? the null state. The null state, which does nothing. If the number is positive, it does this, which is nothing. It always does this and this. If the number is negative, it skips this, but it still does these two. Okay? You would never write this. The point is, this is a hard to find bug sometimes. You're so used to doing semicolons that you accidentally do this, and you can't understand why it's not working. And the reason is, after an if expression, there can be one of three things. The first thing is what? What can follow an if expression? A single statement. What else can follow an if expression? Compound statement with the brackets. And what's the third thing that can follow an if expression? This annoying null statement, which pretty much is this there to torture us. Okay? Now the if is kind of boring. Let's look at, well, first of all, here's the flowchart. I promised you we would see some flowcharts to see what happens. So here's how the flowchart works. If the expression is true, it's going to do whatever's in the statement part. In all cases, it keeps following the code that follows that. Okay, so if there's lines of code that follow it, all of them are going to do that. Okay? So we can have an if and many, many lines of code that follow. If the statement is executed, good. If the statement is not executed, good. In all cases, we keep going. Okay? Let's look at a couple of examples. Okay, in the first example, if tax code equals T, we do this calculation. In the second example, if num is less than 0, we print negative. We also add, we bump what we call a counter, and we count how many negatives occurred. Okay? So this compound statement is required because I have more than one statement if the number is less than 0. Okay? This example right here, if age is less than 21, it's going to print under age. Okay? So these are all examples of simple ifs, no else.